The rain was falling so hard that night it blurred the city into nothing but shadows and headlights. Every street looked lonely, every passing car seemed to be racing towards somewhere warmer, somewhere safer. I was only minutes away from finishing another exhausting 12-hour shift when I noticed a young woman sitting alone on the curb outside an expensive rooftop lounge. Her elegant blue dress was soaked by the rain, one of her heels had slipped off, and her head rested against a cold concrete pillar as if she had completely given up. People walked around her without slowing down. Some glanced at her with judgment, others with amusement, but nobody stopped. I almost drove away too. After all, I had my own problems, my own bills, and my own broken life waiting for me at home. But something inside me refused to leave her there. That single decision would change both of our lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still exists in this world and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us humanity is still alive. At 29 years old, I wasn't living the life I had imagined. My name is Ethan Carter, and I worked as a night delivery driver for one of the biggest construction companies in the city. My father had spent his life as a mechanic before cancer stole him away, leaving behind medical bills that swallowed every dollar our family had saved. My mother struggled with arthritis, making it impossible for her to work full-time, so every paycheck I earned disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Rent, medication, groceries, electricity, it never seemed to end. Dreams had become luxuries I couldn't afford. My boss, Richard Holloway, was a legend inside the company. Employees admired him from a distance, but nobody truly knew him. He was brilliant, disciplined, and intimidating. Rumors painted him as a man who expected perfection and had no patience for mistakes. I had only seen him a handful of times, always surrounded by executives wearing expensive suits while I stood in the background carrying delivery paperwork. To him, I was invisible. That rainy evening, as I watched the young woman trembling on the sidewalk, I noticed she wasn't unconscious. She was scared. Tears mixed with the rain on her face, and she kept whispering words I couldn't understand. Several men nearby laughed as they passed her, making comments that instantly made my stomach tighten. I knew leaving her there wasn't an option. When I approached, she looked up with eyes that carried more sadness than drunkenness. She smelled of expensive perfume mixed with alcohol, but what struck me wasn't that she had been drinking. It was the loneliness hidden behind her expression. Carefully helping her into my car, I asked where she lived. She struggled to answer at first, fumbling through her purse before handing me an identification card attached to an elegant leather wallet. The address belonged to one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city, a place I had only driven through while making deliveries. The drive lasted almost 40 minutes. She drifted in and out of sleep, occasionally apologizing for being a burden. Those quiet apologies revealed something unexpected. Wealth hadn't protected her from pain. Every few minutes she whispered that she wished people loved her instead of her family's name. I didn't ask questions. Some stories deserve silence before they deserve answers. When we finally reached the massive estate, iron gates slowly opened after security confirmed her identity. I expected servants or security guards to rush outside immediately, but instead an older housekeeper ran through the front door with tears streaming down her cheeks. Relief flooded her face as she wrapped the young woman in a blanket. Moments later, another figure appeared. Even in casual clothes, I recognized him instantly. Richard Holloway. My boss. His eyes moved from his daughter to me, then back again. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I felt my heart pounding harder than it ever had during any work evaluation. I expected questions. I expected suspicion. Instead, he quietly thanked me. His voice carried exhaustion rather than authority. He asked if I could stay for a few minutes while his daughter was taken inside. Standing in the entrance hall, surrounded by paintings probably worth more than everything I owned, I suddenly realized how different our worlds were. Yet grief has a strange way of making every house feel the same. Richard slowly explained that his daughter, Olivia, had recently lost her mother after a long battle with illness. Since then, she had been falling apart emotionally. She avoided friends, ignored therapy, and spent nights trying to escape memories that always found their way back. The business world saw Richard as an unshakable billionaire, but standing before me was simply a father terrified of losing the only family he had left. That confession changed everything. Money couldn't erase heartbreak. Success couldn't buy peace. Power couldn't heal loneliness. Before I left, Richard offered me money for helping Olivia. I politely refused. I hadn't stopped because I wanted a reward. I stopped because someone needed help. As I drove home that night, I believed the story had ended. I couldn't have been more wrong. The following Monday, I arrived at work expecting another ordinary day. Instead, Human Resources called me into a conference room. Fear immediately filled my mind. Had I broken company policy? Was I being fired? Inside sat Richard Holloway. He wasn't wearing the cold expression everyone feared. He asked me one simple question. Why did I stop? I answered honestly. Because if it had been my sister sitting alone in the rain, would pray someone else stopped for her. Silence filled the room. Then Richard smiled for what felt like the first time in years. Over the following weeks, my life remained mostly the same. I still worked overtime. Bills still piled up. My mother's health still required constant attention. But occasionally I noticed Richard greeting me by name whenever our paths crossed. That alone shocked my coworkers. One afternoon, I received an unexpected request. Olivia wanted to thank me personally. Reluctantly, I accepted. When we met at a quiet cafe, she looked completely different from the woman I had found that rainy night. She was healthier, calmer, and genuinely embarrassed by what had happened. She admitted that she barely remembered the drive home but remembered one thing clearly. Nobody had looked at her with judgment. I simply treated her like another human being. For someone surrounded by people chasing her father's fortune, that simple kindness meant everything. Our friendship grew slowly. Not because of wealth. Not because of romance. Because pain recognizes pain. She learned about my father's death, my mother's illness, and the constant pressure of keeping our small family afloat. I learned about the impossible expectations placed upon her since childhood, how every friendship seemed to come with hidden motives, and how grief had convinced her she would never smile sincerely again. Months passed. One afternoon, while delivering documents to headquarters, I noticed employees whispering nervously. The company was struggling. Several major contracts had collapsed. Layoffs seemed inevitable. For workers like me, losing this job meant losing everything. Days later, Richard gathered hundreds of employees in the main auditorium. Everyone expected bad news. Instead, he spoke about integrity. He spoke about character. He spoke about one rainy night when a stranger chose compassion over convenience. Without mentioning my name immediately, he explained that businesses survive because of people who still believe doing the right thing matters, even when nobody is watching. Then he called me onto the stage. I froze. In front of everyone, he shared the entire story. By the time he finished, many employees had tears in their eyes. Richard announced that rather than downsizing immediately, the company would launch several new community outreach projects focused on helping struggling families, funding addiction recovery programs, and supporting emergency transportation services for vulnerable people. He wanted the company culture to reflect the values shown by one ordinary employee. Me. The applause felt overwhelming. Not because I enjoyed attention. Because my father had always told me that character is what you do when nobody expects anything from you. That day, his words finally made sense. Months later, another surprise arrived. Richard offered me a position managing the company's community partnership program. The salary wasn't extravagant, but it was enough to finally pay off my father's remaining medical debt and ensure my mother received proper treatment. For the first time in years, hope entered our home. My mother cried when I handed her the final payment receipt. She held it against her chest as though someone had returned a piece of our family we thought was gone forever. Meanwhile, Olivia continued rebuilding her life. She returned to college. She began volunteering at women's shelters, helping young people dealing with addiction and depression. She often said that one stranger's kindness had reminded her life was still worth fighting for. The truth was that she had changed my life just as much. Because of her, I stopped believing that wealthy people couldn't understand suffering. Because of Richard, I learned that leadership isn't measured by power but by humility. Because of one rainy night, 3 broken lives slowly found healing together. Years later, I visited the same sidewalk where everything had begun. The rooftop lounge still welcomed crowds every weekend. Cars still rushed past without slowing down. Rain still fell across the pavement. But every time I drove that road, I remembered how close I had come to ignoring a stranger. Sometimes destiny doesn't arrive wearing expensive clothes or carrying obvious opportunities. Sometimes it looks like a frightened person sitting alone while the rest of the world keeps walking. The greatest miracles often begin with the smallest acts of compassion. The world tells us success is measured by wealth, titles, and achievements. Life teaches something different. Success is measured by the number of people who sleep safely because you chose kindness. It is measured by the tears you wipe away without expecting recognition. It is measured by the hope you give someone when they have none left. The night I drove a drunk young woman home, I thought I was simply helping a stranger. I had no idea I was helping a grieving daughter. I had no idea I was restoring a father's faith in humanity. I had no idea I was rescuing my own future at the exact same time. One simple decision changed everything. Not because fate is magical, but because kindness has a way of traveling farther than we ever imagine. Before we reach the end, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness always comes back." Your message might inspire someone else who needs hope today. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of someone you love, or encouraged you to choose compassion even when it's difficult, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with family and friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that restore faith in humanity and remind people that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. As Ethan walked away from that familiar sidewalk one final time, he realized something his father had tried to teach him all along. Every person we meet is carrying a battle we cannot see. Some wear expensive suits, others worn-out uniforms. Some live in mansions, others in tiny apartments. Yet every heart breaks the same way, every tear feels the same, and every soul longs for compassion. The greatest legacy we can leave behind isn't found in bank accounts or job titles. It is found in the lives we quietly lift when nobody else chooses to stop. And perhaps, somewhere tonight, another lonely stranger is waiting for someone to make the same choice that changed Ethan's life forever.